Hello everyone and welcome to the Council of Elrond, where we discuss all things Lord of the Rings, the Silmarillion and general Tolkien lore. On today's episode we are covering the most famous object in all of Tolkien's writings, the One Ring. Before we kick off today's episode, I'd like to thank all the people that continue to sign up to our Patreon account, and of course to all the new subscribers that are finding our YouTube page. So if you haven't already, please head on over there and give us a watch on YouTube, as you can see some small snippets and questions taken from each of our podcasts, and consider giving us a like and a subscribe if you can as well. Thank you all so much, and now on to the episode.
One ring to rule them all.
So, the One Ring. 3 rings for the elven kings under the sky, 7 for the dwarf lords in their halls of stone, 9 for mortal men doomed to die, 1 for the Dark Lord on his dark throne, in the land of Mordor where shadows lie. I just wanted to add that in case anyone hasn't heard it 10,000 times.
You forgot to say in the land of Mordor.
Yeah, in Mordor. I just wanted to let everyone know that in this episode we'll be covering the most famous ring of them all, the One Ring. Now, this is the last episode in our mini-series covering all of the rings of power, so that you guys know exactly what they do, who use them, some interesting facts surrounding them, and where they all ended up. So if you'd like to hear more about the other rings in great detail before listening to this episode, then please go check those episodes out first, as I'm going to quickly recap on what we know of the other 19 rings that we discussed thus far.
Check them out.
So, yeah, first of all, Johnny, welcome to the Council of Elrond. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm ready to hear
Very
about
good.
the One Ring.
Yeah? Are you excited? It's the finale.
I'm specifically wearing my T-shirt that has, I don't know if you can see it, I've got the One Ring symbol here.
Ah,
So
very nice.
yeah, this is
Very nice.
in honor of
Merch.
today's merch. Go get it. Yeah, this is not our merch.
No, but it's
yeah,
someone's merch.
it's someone's merch. Yeah, so shout out to those people. I don't know who they are.
Yeah, don't worry. I will include you in the episode, as I have some interesting questions for you later on.
Thank you.
But I'm going to start with this quick recap and a timeline of the ring. So, in 1500 of the Second Age, Sauron, under the disguise of Anatar, claimed to be an emissary for the Valar and befriended the Noldor elves in the realm of Eregion. He instructed them in the art of ring crafting. Celebrimbor did not fully trust Anatar, but was the lord of the Gwaith y Myrdain, which basically means master elven smiths, and they forged 16 rings of power, whilst Celebrimbor forged 3 himself in secret. About a century later, Anatar, or Sauron, leaves Eregion and travels back to the land of Mordor, where he forges the One Ring of Power in the fires of Mount Doom, and he pours his will and malice into it. He also infuses his spirit, or as Tolkien calls it, his Fea, to the ring, and he and it were bound to each other, meaning that as long as the ring survives, so does Sauron. So for any Harry Potter fans, this is similar to, or it's exactly how Voldemort's Horcruxes work, and it's most likely where J.K. Rowling stole that idea. And her name, probably. As soon as he wields it for the first time, Celebrimbor and the Noldor immediately become aware of Sauron's deception and treachery. The elves immediately remove their rings. The 3 that Celebrimbor forged in secret were sent away to Gil-galad and Galadriel, whilst the rest remained in Eregion in a vault. Sauron starts to form his armies and wages war against Eregion in 1693, where he is victorious, destroying Eregion, torturing and killing Celebrimbor, spoiler for the Rings of Power TV series, and claiming the 16 Rings of Power. Sauron is eventually driven from Eregion, but distributes 7 rings to the Dwarven Lords and 9 to mortal men. The dwarves use their rings to amass great wealth, and the men gain unnatural long life and become great rulers and sorcerers. So that's kind of a recap on the last 3 episodes. And before I get into the timeline of the ring, I wanted to ask you, Johnny, what other names or synonyms does the One Ring have that you know of?
Precious, my precious.
Yes, that is one.
It is one. Obviously, it's known as the One Ring. It's known as known as precious by multiple people, not just by Gollum, of course, by Isildur as well, and
Yes,
by
it
Bilbo.
was precious to me.
And any others? Are there other obvious ones?
Does Frodo say it as well at one point? I can't even remember.
I'm not too sure about
Maybe.
that. But am I forgetting an obvious one?
Well, so I've called it the One Ring.
Mm-hmm.
I know you called it something else in our Christmas episode at the end of our song. Yes, the Ring of Power. That's another one. The Great Ring of Power, I suppose.
Oh, the ruling ring.
Yes, well done. That's another good one. There is another one that is, well, it's not obvious, but you definitely know this. It is named after the person that claims it off Sauron.
Isildur's ring?
Yes, but it's not a ring. It's
Isildur's Bane.
Yes, Isildur's Bane. So,
and it could just be called Sauron's ring as well, I suppose.
Yeah, I suppose it could be called anything. There is one other thing here. You might know the answer to this, but do you know what it is called in black speech?
Ooh, it's a good question. If I start saying this in black speech, is my whole room going to just like get darker, and I'm going to have suddenly like a choir of Welsh people behind me speaking in very, very low.
That's a
low
possibility.
register.
I'm not going to.
It might happen. I don't think I should speak the black tongue in my living room here. But no, I can't think of an answer now.
It should be heard from every corner of your living room. Well, if it's actually the first words on the ring's inscription, and you do hear Gandalf say it when he stands up and starts uttering the speech of Mordor. Do you remember? No,
I don't. Go on. Let me know.
Okay, it's Ajnazg.
Ajnazg. Okay, yeah.
So that sure, I may as well. I have it here. I'm going to recite the ring's inscription in black speech.
Because yeah, Gandalf says like that. He says that word Ajnag like a good few times when he stands up. But I wouldn't have known which one of those words meant the ring or which one meant.
Yeah,
I do recognize that
thrice.
When I say it now.
Thrice it says it in the ring's inscription. It says Ajnaz Durbatuluk, Ajnaz Gimbatul, Ajnaz Drakatuluk, Agbarzum Ishikripatul. I think it sounds cool.
Very, very good.
We can add some effects in there to make it sound all evil.
all Gandalfy.
All Gandalf. No, I think when I hear it, I feel like an orc when I'm saying it. It's like Ajnag. It's so I don't know, orcish. But anyways, so I just wanted to give a brief timeline of the ring. So basically, what happens next with Sauron and his One Ring? So in 3262 of the Second Age, Númenórean king Ar-Pharazôn, who we're going to see in the Rings of Power, sends a fleet and attacks Sauron's forces at Umbar. And Sauron decides to surrender to the king as he wanted to infiltrate the Númenóreans from within. So he convinces the Númenóreans to worship Melkor, his master, I suppose, and he was the high priest of this religion. He climbs the ranks to become the king's chief counselor and eventually leads Númenor to its destruction, where Sauron's body is actually destroyed. Now, it isn't completely known if Sauron possessed the ring or not at this time, but after the destruction of Númenor, Sauron's spirit returns to Mordor, where he regained his form and his power. Slowly, that is. When Sauron's body was destroyed in Númenor, it was fair and beautiful, as it was, I think it was still Anatar at that point. But afterwards, it is said that he could never pretend to be anything but ugly. He had grown hateful of the Númenóreans and waged war on the survivors who had founded the realm of Gondor. Isildur, Elendil and Gil-galad form an alliance of men and elves and march on Barad-dûr. Sauron comes forth himself onto the battlefield and he kills Elendil and Gil-galad, but is eventually defeated. Isildur approaches Sauron's body and cuts off the finger with the ring on it. Sauron's spirit then goes into hiding for 1,000 years. This is the great battle that we see at the beginning of the Lord of the Rings movie, by the way. After this, Barad-dûr is leveled, but as we have spoken about in a previous podcast, the foundations could not be destroyed as the tower was built with the power of the One Ring, which wasn't destroyed by Isildur, but rather kept as a family heirloom. Isildur returned to Gondor, then almost 3 years later heads north to reunite with his wife and child and take his place as the King of Arnor. But orcs draw near. Actually, the ring attracts orcs near, and they kill his men whilst he uses the ring to disappear and escapes into the river Anduin to try swim to the other side, but the ring intentionally slips off his finger and betrayed Isildur. He is shot by passing orcs when he emerges from the water, and the ring is then lost to the river for 2,000 years. And then we get The Hobbit, and then we get The Lord of the Rings, and I don't want to recount all the stories in there.
Just to say as well that I think it's important to mention that the One Ring had the ability to kind of, maybe you're going to say it later on, but it had the ability to change size, and that's one of the reasons how it purposefully slipped itself off Isildur's finger while he was in the river, that it was actually able to get bigger and smaller and kind of not shapeshift, but just size shift, I suppose. And so, yeah, that's just something interesting to note as well.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I actually didn't have that anywhere taken down. There's too much information on this One Ring, but yeah, that is one of the things, and you actually do see it in the extended editions of the Fellowship of the Ring. Yeah, I think there's a scene where Isildur is holding the ring, and it just shrinks down.
I was always kind of confused when I saw that in the movies like years ago when I would see it, and I wasn't sure if it was like just a camera trick or if it was trying to say, it actually is getting smaller, because I didn't know that. Yeah. So I thought it was just one of those kind of cool, it just looks like it's getting smaller because of the way the camera does it. But no, I think it now that I know that about the One Ring, I'm assuming that's what it's trying to show, that maybe it was huge, fitting on. I suppose Sauron's finger was bigger than a mortal man's finger, so it was shrinking down.
And then a mortal man would be bigger than a hobbit.
True. Yeah. Yep. So one size fits all. It's like one of those kind of socks that you can buy. It's like
in pennies or Primark.
Yeah. Good for any size foot.
One ring fits all. So I just wanted to ask you, so far we've discussed 2 ring bearers, but you're a pretty smart guy, and I wanted you to tell me who else touched the ring in that order. We'll take a break and kind of discuss these at each one. So after Sauron, we have Isildur, and after Isildur, who do we have?
Who's the next to touch it?
Yeah.
Deagle. Suppose.
So Deagle, and then straight after that,
and then Smeagol straight away after that.
Exactly. So this was in the year 2463. So I just have a couple of questions. Well, first of all, why didn't Gollum become a wraith like the Nazgul? Like, he possessed the ring for over 500 years, so why didn't he become a wraith?
Well, first of all, the wraiths had their rings a lot longer than Gollum. Like, they had them for about between 2,500 to maybe 4,000 years. So they had a lot longer under the possession of a ring, and also the One Ring wasn't designed to do that. I suppose that the One Ring was the ruling ring. It wasn't like to turn someone into a wraith, whereas the 9 ring of the Nazgul, they were supposed to be subservient to the One Ring. So I don't have an exact answer for you because I'm not too sure about this. I'm just thinking out loud as I go. But basically, I don't. Now, if Gollum had kept the ring for another couple of thousand years, maybe it's possible that he would have become a wraith, I suppose, because I mean, his body would seem to kind of it looked like it was on the way out. He was kind of starting to fade away,
decompose.
Yeah, but I don't know. I'm interested to hear the answer.
No, well, yeah, you're right in everything thus far, but it's just an added note that this is our first clue to the natural resilience of hobbits to the power of the One Ring, because Smeagol, well, he wasn't a hobbit, but he was something close to what a hobbit was when he didn't have the ring. this is why Bilbo and Frodo were less affected than probably most other races. It is noted also that Gollum didn't always wear the ring. In fact, he disliked when he wore it, and he couldn't be seen, and he couldn't hunt properly, but he usually kept it in his pockets. So this could be another reason.
Yeah, when you were wearing the One Ring, you kind of were transported into the sort of like the Shadow Realm type thing. And that's where the Nazgul kind of lived, I suppose. And we spoke about this in last week's episode, but basically it was more difficult. Like the Nazgul didn't have good eyesight. They were like a bull or a shark or something, that they kind of like, they could see a little bit, but they needed something to focus their eyesight, I suppose. So when we spoke about last week, when Frodo put the ring on at Weathertop, he actually then entered into the Wraith world, and he made it a lot easier for them to be able to stab him. Yeah. But so maybe
he was trying to hide.
Yeah, exactly. He was trying to hide,
and they were like, "Oh, there you are."
Yeah, they just did. It was just had the opposite effect. So maybe for Gollum, when you said it was difficult to hunt, the first thing that came into my head was like, it must be easy for him to hunt because he's invisible. They can't see him coming. But it's probably harder for him to see a fish or something like that when he's in the other.
That's true.
The Wraith world or whatever. So. Yeah.
He could see wraith fish though, probably. Yeah. If there were any of those. If any fish like swam through the One Ring while it was in the River Anduin,
they're probably not very nutritious. Those wraith fish.
No. That'd be pretty bony fish.
Yeah.
So yes, we have Sauron, Isildur, Deagle, and Smeagol. Who's the next one?
After Smeagol to touch the ring, Bilbo.
Mm-hmm. Very good. So Bilbo gets the ring in 2941. Now, I just have a couple of questions on each person. Like you're probably going to know all these, but just little interesting things for the listeners. And I think we've discussed this before, but why wasn't Gandalf overly concerned when he noticed Bilbo's magic ring for the first time?
Yeah, so there were lots of rings. We know that we've already spoken about the rings of power. There were 20 rings of power. But then apart from the rings of power, there were also other rings called the lesser rings. And the rings of power all had big kind of gems and stones in them, whereas the lesser rings were more similar to the One Ring, which were more just kind of plain gold bands, or I'm not sure if they were all gold, but plain bands. So Gandalf just naturally assumed that this was just some lesser ring, and yeah, so I think that was the main reason he overlooked it.
Yeah, excellent. Absolutely excellent. And I just have a little side fact in here, which I thought was interesting. Bilbo was the only person that willingly gave up the ring. So when he was giving it to Gandalf, I suppose, the only ring bearer, I suppose.
Sure.
Well, kind of.
I mean, maybe Frodo attempted to a couple of times, but he didn't actually.
Yeah, but well, I'm just looking at not the next ring bearer, but yeah. Anyways, who is the next?
Also, yeah,
to
there's
touch
a couple
the
of
ring?
people that hold it and give it back.
Yeah, but like he was the first to give it up. The first that was actually solely attached to it. I think that's what I meant. You know, like people that are obsessed with the ring.
Yeah,
Frodo does become one of those people that is obsessed with the ring, and we know his heroism at the very end where he decides to keep it. Anyway, so we have Bilbo in 2941.
Yeah, it's pretty good of Bilbo to actually give it up after having it for so many years and after being like so affected by it. So yeah, that's I hadn't really ever thought about it that way before. I mean, again, it's one of my favorite scenes from the Fellowship movie where it's so amazingly shot by Peter Jackson, where they had that big huge magnet underneath the floor in order to suck the ring down, and he drops it and it's like
exactly
that, like I love that music, and then just like
brilliant,
it just like bangs down off the floor because they really I remember them saying that they really wanted to draw attention to that scene as well, but I kind of just overlooked the fact that it is actually a huge deal, that and the fact that he's the only one. I never really thought about that he's the only ring bearer. That
it is amazing because he has it for so long, and we like you don't really see it because it's the setup to the Lord of the Rings when he gives up the ring, and we just see Frodo's 1 year journey with the ring. And I know he gets closer and closer to Mordor, and it becomes the power of the ring grows, and but like we see how it completely
Bilbo had it for
over
60
like
years,
heroin. And Frodo only has it for 1 year, because he had it in his house, but he wasn't looking at it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So
walked
so
away.
on to the next one after Bilbo. Who do we have that touches the ring next?
Frodo.
And immediately in the same year.
And so Gandalf touches it as well.
Yeah. So in
no, 'cause I
the
was
year
yeah.
3001 of the Third Age. So
Sure.
literally, yeah. 3001 of the Third Age, both Frodo and Gandalf touch it in Bag End. Now, we know...
Yeah, because it doesn't show that in the movies. In the movie, because I've seen people online saying like Gandalf touches the ring, and other people saying no, he doesn't. He only holds it in that envelope and stuff. But that's just in the movies. But in the books, he does actually hold it, and he's like there's a famous drawing. I'm not sure who it's by.
I think I know the one.
Do you know who it's by? It's
Are
by
you talking about the one...
Ted Naismith, is it? Where he does the one
Is
where
it
it
the one
shows
where they're
Gandalf
both
sitting
over
down
the fire?
Yeah, and they've got the fire, and Gandalf's holding it up in the air, and he's kind of showing it to Frodo.
I'm not sure who that's by, but yeah.
Yeah, it's cool. It's a famous picture.
Check out Ted Naismith anyways, even if it's not him, because he's got some amazing art. So different to the Lord of the Rings movies, because it's all in the same year. They leave 17 years later. Frodo leaves the Shire. So who would be the next person to touch the ring after Frodo and Gandalf in 3001?
There's a little bit of I say you're probably going to go into this, but there's a bit of a mysterious person who may or may not have touched the ring, which is in Rivendell after Frodo gets stabbed and he gets taken to Rivendell. Obviously he
Very good. I was going to ask you about this after it, but yeah.
Okay,
yeah, keep going.
I'll say. So basically, he gets healed by Elrond, and when he wakes up, the ring is no longer around his neck, and it was originally loose because he had it on his finger, and then he took it off. So when he wakes up, he finds it back on its chain. So someone that we don't know about, and it's never mentioned, obviously took the ring and put it back on its chain and left it there. So now we don't know if they touched it with their fingers. Maybe they were worried and they picked it up with
gloves,
like pair of tongs or something, and they were like, "Okay, we'll put it back on." But yeah, so there is that mystery person that we don't really know about. So that's just something that again, there's some online debate and things about who that person could be.
Yeah, and it could have been a person or it could be persons. And like people have debated whether this could be Elrond, it could be Gandalf again, or it could just be any high elf of Rivendell. But their identity and the process and whether they touched it are unknown, which is all correct. But who would be the next person that touches the ring after Frodo, Gandalf, and Mystery Man?
Then Sam, I suppose, is the next. No,
a book character. A very famous...
Oh, sorry, of course. Was this not... Did I miss this person already? Was it not Tom Bombadil before the person in Rivendell?
Yeah.
Sorry,
well, I didn't know you were...
Sorry,
I didn't know you were going to bring up the Rivendell person, so kudos on that.
Right,
so Tom Bombadil would have been next, yeah.
Tom slipped my mind, so he didn't slip my mind, I just got the order wrong, but yeah, of course, Tom Bombadil famously... as we said when you said earlier that when we were speaking earlier about Bilbo being one of the only people being the only ring bearer to give up the ring, and I immediately thought of Tom Bombadil when he's just playing with the ring like it's nothing, and he puts it on his finger and he makes the ring disappear, and it's kind of he's doing little like magic sleight of hand party tricks with this ring, and then yeah exactly. And then he just gives it back to Frodo. So
yeah, exactly. So he doesn't turn invisible, but the ring turns invisible instead. Now we have a Tom Bombadil episode, so if anyone wants to go hear more about Tom and the ring, go check that out. There are many wild theories as to why this is the case with Tom and the ring, but that's all they are. They're theories. We don't actually know. So yeah, check out that episode of Tom Bombadil because he's a complete enigma when it comes to the Ring of Power. So that, and by the way, that was in the year 2018 of the Third Age. So this would be 17 years after Frodo and Gandalf first touched the ring.
Yeah.
So Now we move on to the last person to become a ring bearer, or the last new person to touch the ring. Who would that be?
Yeah, the last new person to touch the ring because someone else touches it as well. So Sam
Yeah.
touches it, obviously, when Frodo gets stabbed by Shelob. Sam takes it and he has it for, I'd want to say, one day.
He has it for 2 days. And I wanted to ask you how the ring affected Sam during his 2 days as the ring bearer.
He gets like, I don't know, he gets a bit delusional and he thinks that he wants to become like Sam the what's he call himself? Sam the strong, Samwise the Strong.
Exactly.
Is that what it is? And
Samwise the Strong.
He has visions of himself basically becoming the best gardener in the world or something, and spreading gardens all over Middle Earth or something like that. And yeah. So
yeah, basically he has the ring, and he's not actually wearing the ring at this point, but he is getting closer to Mordor, and the ring's power is becoming very strong. I think he does wear the ring. He does wear the ring at some points, but when he's having these visions, he's just holding the ring, and he envisions himself as an enlarged, huge warrior, and he calls himself Samwise the Strong. And he had wild fantasies where he charged across the dark lands with a flaming sword, and armies are flocking to him to destroy Barad-dûr. And then the clouds all rolled away, and he starts envisioning gardens, and he's the best gardener in the world. And, to each their own, I suppose.
Sam.
Let it blossom more and live. Let it live for Samwise the Strong. Samwise the Strong.
Yeah, but so those are all the 9 ring bearers, or I shouldn't say ring bearers, the 9 people who have touched the ring, and obviously then there's that possible 10th that Johnny discussed earlier in Rivendell. Well done for remembering that, because I was going to bring that up now and see if you remember.
Sorry,
it
I've ruined the layout.
No, no, it's perfect. No, it's perfect because you almost got the right order as well. But yeah, kudos to that. You didn't even need the prompt.
Before it's destroyed, then the last person that touches it is Smeagol again when he bites it off Frodo's finger, I suppose. But he's not a new ring bearer or a person who touched the ring.
Yeah, and of course Frodo would have touched it after Sam as well. So
yeah, it's true.
The last two,
yeah. So yeah,
very good. Right.
Very nice.
So I want to get on to the powers of the One Ring. So Johnny, can you tell me what powers the One Ring has, or what can it do?
Oh God. I mean, I'm just going to give you a couple of like shitty answers, and you can tell me all the proper stuff after a while. But of course, obviously, when people have seen the movies, one of the first things that they're going to notice is that when you put the ring on, it turns you invisible. And yes, that is something that it would do, but not to everyone. And there's a lot of people asking, why doesn't Sauron turn invisible? And it's because it doesn't work the same way with everyone. And what it really was doing when you put the One Ring on, it's not that it's turning you invisible. I mentioned it earlier, it's kind of transporting you to the sort of the Wraith realm or the other world where the kind of spirits and all that live. So Sauron, because he was a Maya, he basically already lived in both the physical world and the Wraith world. So when he put on the ring, it didn't transport him to the Wraith world because he was already there. So that's
Newsflash, asshole! I've been here the entire time.
So that's one of the things about so that's the whole invisibility thing that happens with the ring. So other beings, and then of course we know that the weird thing with Tom Bombadil, he didn't turn invisible, he turned the ring invisible. We don't know what's going on there. We don't know who Tom.
Yeah, I wouldn't even put that down as a power of the ring. That's like
there's just
an enigma of Tom Bombadil.
Yeah. So what are the powers? Of course, we know that it had the power to control all the other rings. But again, it's not like you just get the ring and now you suddenly have these kinds of powers. You need to be able to learn how to use those powers. You need to learn, and it takes a huge like amount of strength and will and fortitude to be able to do that. So I don't know, other powers. I don't know. I have no idea. I mean, I could just sort of blab on and kind of make some stuff up, and I'd probably get close to the mark. But I'd rather you told me now.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, those are the obvious ones, and if you think about it more and more, you could be like, well, that's also a power of the ring. So I have left some of the really obscure ones out, or there's, there might be one line in the book that mentions, that basically the ring casts out a figure or something, and I left all those kind of one-liner things out, but the most obvious ones.
Yeah.
So I have them labeled here. So the first one I have is XP points. So like all the other rings of power, it naturally enhances the skills and abilities of the wielder. We will discuss it more in detail later, but to generalize, the more powerful you are, the greater the ring enhances that power. Now, the next one is invisibility, which we already got into, and you explained it perfectly. That Sauron exists in both the physical world and the Wraith world, and that's why he doesn't turn invisible. So it is important to note that if you're just a fan of the movies, that you're not going invisible. You're actually being transported into another world. Mm-hmm. The next one here is life extension. And we see Smeagol and Bilbo both possess the ring long enough for their aging process to significantly slow down. This is why Bilbo suddenly becomes an old hobbit once the ring is destroyed, and we see this in the film as well. Gollum would most likely have turned to dust if he were still alive. We discussed that in a previous episode as well. What would happen to Gollum? And of course, the Nazgul stopped aging also, and they lived for thousands of years, so they would have just have been regular men. On to the next one, we have the power of persuasion. It is also said that the bearer of the ring could more easily command and dominate others, which can be extremely useful for someone like Sauron, who was a master manipulator already. As explained, he was under the guise of Anatar, an extremely hot elf, and manipulated the Noldor elves into crafting the rings of power. He also, along his journey, he managed to manipulate many men into joining his command, such as the men of Harad and the Easterlings. So this could be down to just... Again, this comes into the XP thing. Like, it makes him more powerful.
Yeah.
I think it would have made a regular person more persuasive, but he was already very persuasive.
Could you imagine Sauron getting his hands on that? Like,
with the voice of Sauron.
For in terms of persuasion, because he was already like one of the most persuasive people on Middle Earth as well. He would have been a great salesman, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
He'd be upselling you. You're like, I'm going to buy a Honda Accord. And you come out with like I don't know, a Ferrari. You're like, oh, God damn it, I don't have the money for this. So if he got the ring of power and it like upped his persuasion game, well then the sky's the limit.
We'd be screwed. Yeah. So on to the next power, we have time control. I enjoyed labeling all these different powers. So we see how Galadriel used her ring of power to preserve the beauty of nature in Lorien. Sauron's One Ring was also able to slow the decay of the world, and he tied the One Ring to the construction of Barad-dûr. So there's a little bit of power of time control there. But on to the next one, which you did touch on. I call this one remote control. So the ring was also, it allowed Sauron to control the 9 rings of men. And as we've described previously in the Rings of Power episode, the relationship between the One Ring and the 9 rings, the ring was designed to control all 19 other rings of power and lesser rings. But as we see, with the dwarves, the plan didn't completely work out for Sauron, and the elves chose not to wear them until Sauron was defeated at the War of the Last Alliance. It is believed that the 3 elven rings, even though they were forged without Sauron's tutelage, were the most vulnerable to the One Ring's power, as Elrond states at the council, quote, "All that has been wrought by those who wield the 3 will turn to their undoing, and their minds and hearts will become revealed to Sauron. If he regains the One, it would be better if the 3 had never been." So I thought that was kind of interesting that, of course, Sauron probably returned to Mordor a bit too quickly because he didn't oversee the forging of the three rings at all. And when he put on his master ring for the first time, that basically alerted the elves to take theirs off immediately and not use them. But I did think it was interesting that there is an alternate universe where the elves could have all fallen to Sauron's will as well. And they were actually probably the most vulnerable to fall to as well.
Class.
So yeah.
Very cool.
So the next power that we see is temptation. And we see this in particular in the movies. The ring tempts people when they are in close proximity of it. Now, sorry, I shouldn't say in particular in the movies, but I think the movies do place a good emphasis on the temptation of the ring. The ring tempts people to do evil things, like Smeagol killing his friend. It tempts people to attack others for it, such as Boromir trying to pry it off Frodo. And it just inspires greed and lust. And like I said, the films do a great job of showing this, showing the manipulation and temptation.
Touch me, Frodo.
Exactly. Like, do you know anytime the ring is in sight, you hear that eerie, like that kind of ring theme soundtrack, and you hear the kind of high pitched. No, like that's the ring theme, but you know the way anytime the ring is like Frodo's holding out the ring, you kind of hear the boom boom. You hear kind of like the undertones of Sauron's voice and the heavy heartbeat sounds, like the boom boom. Boom, boom. I just think the way the film does that, I think it did get an Oscar for its sound design and all that. So
we could talk
that was one of the things.
We could talk for hours about the sound design of the movie and the music by Howard Shore. So well, maybe not today. We don't have time. But yeah, we'll do that again. We'll do that again for sure.
Yeah. And finally, the last power that the ring possesses is miscellaneous. Now, well, basically, it has a couple of mistletoe underneath the miscellaneous. So there are examples of Frodo in the Fellowship of the Ring standing at Amon Hen and being able to see for miles and miles. I think in the book it describes him seeing war everywhere he looks, for as far as the eye could see, or something like that. And he actually sees as far as the Tower of Barad-dûr, and the ring does it as well. Or sorry, the Fellowship of the Ring movie does it as well when he puts on the ring at Amon Hen, and he sees a bunch of stuff, and then it kind of the vision shoots him towards the bottom of the Barad-dûr, and then it goes right up to the eye.
It goes up. Yeah.
So that's cool. I think that's a cool. I think Peter Jackson makes it a little bit different. It's almost like a vision, but in the book, it's almost described as an actual thing. So that's another kind of weird power that the ring has. But also Sam at Cirith Ungol had a heightened sense of hearing and could also understand what nearby orcs were saying, even though that they were speaking in black speech. So it's got the power of linguistics and translation apparently as well. So
Google Translate. They're still trying to make their app perfect, but the ring is just like, guys, I've got it. I'm going to translate it into your brain. That's class.
Into your mind. Yeah, so instead of people like going around being like, ¿Dónde está la biblioteca? You could just like get the ring and pop it on, and boom, you're a whiz. Pop it on, sounds delicious. Also, so both Frodo and Sam having these abilities would suggest that the ring affects different users in different ways, and it also depends on the location that it is worn in. In the instance of Sam's visions, he wasn't wearing the ring, but he was just holding onto it. So it is believed that the ring's power grows mightier the closer it is to Mordor, where it was created. And similarly, I was about to say Silmarillion. On Mount Doom, Frodo grabs the ring and appears as a figure garbed in white, holding a wheel of fire. I think this is just when Smeagol attacks Frodo on Mount Doom again, and Sam is kind of being all against him, and Frodo kind of pities Smeagol again, but he looks like this crazy creature. So you can just imagine if this is how a humble hobbit appears to others, because again, remember, Sam also looked like a fearsome warrior to an orc, and an orc actually ran away. You can just imagine what Sauron would have looked like in his own lands wielding the One Ring, because hobbits are these lovely little creatures, and one of the ring's powers seems to be like, especially when in Mordor, it makes them look so fearsome and
More
large and threatening. And yeah, so you've got one of the most threatening villains of all time. Imagine what he would look like wearing the One
Powered
Ring
up.
in Mordor.
Yeah.
Yeah, super powered up.
Class.
That would be class. So there are just some examples of the Rings of Power's power. So there you go. And there
nice.
are lots of
Sounds
other
cool.
examples, but yeah, these were just the best ones I could pick out.
And yeah, and just to go back to one that you already mentioned before, but the whole power of using the ring to basically construct Barad-dûr and to construct like his lands in Mordor is something that's really cool as well, and maybe something that we kind of glossed over a little bit, but it's cool to kind of think that the reason there was all the destruction of like the whole of Mordor after the ring was destroyed was because everything that was made by the power of the ring was then unmade after the ring itself was destroyed. So any kind of mountains or even the earth itself that crumbled, it's like, well, yeah, Sauron just used the ring to make those mountains. And people have said like maybe the actual shape itself of Mordor, like, you know, that kind of, it's almost like it's just fortified by mountains. Like they were saying, like maybe it was kind of like that naturally, but maybe Sauron actually, you know, developed the shape of the mountains to make them even more impossible to you know, to climb over them, to get through, to break into his fortress. So it's kind of cool. He could just kind of build mountains with his ring as well. So
Mountains, Sauron.
mountains, Sauron. Yeah, he's just there talking to his mountain planner, or like his
I got a mountain guy.
his contractor, and he's just like, I want to see mountains, Sauron, mountains. Well, he wouldn't say Sauron if he's Sauron.
No.
But he's,
Maybe his contractor was also named Sauron. Maybe it's a very common name in Mordor.
or he's asking like some other orcs for some ideas. Like, what do you guys think? How should we like develop our fortress? They're like, I want to see mountains, Sauron. And he's like, right, okay,
that sounds
put some
good.
mountains in there.
Sounds good to me. That brings us on to, I just have a couple of questions for you regarding the Ring of Power. So, Johnny, first of all, why didn't Sauron just create another ring as a backup?
Again, that's a question that I've heard before, and it's not that simple. Creating the Ring of Power, again, it's very clearly pointed out in the prophecy in the prologue by Galadriel in the first movie that he pours his what she say? He pours his will to dominate into it and his malice, but he also pours his spirit into that ring. And it's like, so then we know that he and the ring are one, and his spirit is bound to this ring. So it's like he empties half of his tank basically into the ring, or maybe more, maybe 70% of his tank into the ring. And so that when he and the ring are together, it's just this incredible force, like you've just said there, like him in Mordor wearing the ring would have been insane. But when they're separated, it's like it's a big problem, and that's why his body is destroyed. But so because the fact that he's emptied so much of himself and his spirit into this one ring, like he doesn't have, it's, as I said, like imagine he empties 50% of his tank into that ring, and then he wants to make another ring. He doesn't have the same amount of, you know, he can't put that into another ring. He can't, like, he'd have to keep on, okay, now I'm going to put 25% in. The third ring, it'll be, you know, 12.5% in. So it's like, he can't do that. Like, it's a big deal to make a Ring of Power. Like, you know, it's like a marriage. Like, you know, you're in it for life. You know, for the whole ring is
for the long haul.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. If we read the Harry Potter books, we know that Voldemort was able to just split his spirit into 7, and we have the 7 Horcruxes. And when Voldemort is defeated, there's still like a 7th of a spirit that just remains in these Horcruxes, or Horcrux I don't know what the plural is there. But but if we're going back to Tolkien's Middle Earth, so Johnny, what race is Sauron?
Sauron is a Maya.
Exactly. And one thing that we know about the Maiar is that they build forms for themselves. So Melian took the form of an elf. The Istari, or the wizards, took the forms of old men, as they wanted to appear as wise counselors and not warriors. Balrogs took the form of fiery demons. So one thing that many people might not know is that a great deal of a Maya's power goes into sustaining a form to use their powers through. No Maya ever has returned after their form was destroyed, with the exception, obviously, of Gandalf the Grey turning to Gandalf the White. He was sent back by Eru Ilúvatar himself. And Sauron, of course, as he created the One Ring, which was basically an extension of his physical form, which wielded the entirety of his spiritual power. So, technically, since the ring contained most of Sauron's power, it was more important. It was a more important part of Sauron's corporal form than Sauron's physical body itself. So the reason that Sauron couldn't make another ring was basically because he was a Maya and thus had to spend a significant amount of spiritual energy to sustain his physical form, that he hadn't any left to create another, and certainly not another ring that was anywhere near as powerful. So maybe like he could have created a little lesser ring and put like, the power of his baby toe into that, but like what good is that,
Yeah,
So-
like I said, he put maybe like 50% of his tank in, and then I said, well, maybe even more, like 70%. It was definitely more that the latter, the 70, maybe even higher. Maybe it was 90% of his power he put into that ring. So it was a huge amount of power that he put in, and his actual physical body was not left with that much power at all without the ring. So yeah, it's cool. And as you said, maybe he had he had a couple of percent on his battery left, and he was like, "Oh, I've got 3% here that I'll invest in a lesser ring." Like maybe that would have been a possibility, but definitely wouldn't have had anywhere near the same results as the One Ring.
Yeah. And Harry Potter fans, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think Voldemort's Horcruxes like had the power. I think that was just literally Voldemort clinging on to survival, and he had basically spread his spirit around in 7 different locations, where Sauron's
Stop mentioning Voldemort and Sauron in the same sentence. This is ridiculous.
Why? I think it's a good comparison, especially to people that aren't so familiar with Sauron and the ring and what he's done with it. Like I think it is a good comparison because people know all about Voldemort's Horcruxes.
I have no idea what a Horcrux is.
Or Horcrux eye. You don't know the Harry Potter things? No. Okay. Well, anyways, I just feel like Sauron wasn't creating the One Ring as a backup for him dying. He was actually creating the ring to become more powerful and, overtake the lands of the world. It was just kind of like an extra advantage to him that when his corporal form was destroyed, his spirit lived on in the ring. But yeah, that's why Sauron couldn't create a backup.
Very good.
So Johnny, why does Frodo wear the ring around a chain on his neck, and why does he not just keep it in his pockets?
I mean, is there an actual answer that you can? I mean, I just think it's much more practical to wear it on a chain. You can't wear it on your finger because then you just be invisible the whole time, and Sauron will be able to see you, and the Nazgul are chasing you, blah blah blah. So you can't wear it on his finger. But I mean, he could have worn it on a chain, which he did, which I think is quite practical. And I just think if you put a ring in your pocket, that's just like, I mean, if he had like a little wallet or something, and he could have popped it in there, or a little maybe Sam's little seasoning box that he had, like a little box like that you could have put it in. He could have popped it in there or something like that. But just putting a ring in your pocket just seems like it's just you're looking for trouble. You're looking. You sit if you've got coins in your pocket, you sit down on the couch. Sometimes you're like all the coins just fall out the back of your pocket, and you're like, oh god, and you're then rooting down the back of the couch looking for the coins. It's like, oh, they fell out because pockets are not reliable, and you can get a hole in your pocket, and I don't know. There's all sorts of trouble that you're looking for.
Yeah, so, I know. And when you're saying there, like having the ring in your pocket, I'm just imagining going out for a few drinks, and you're getting into the taxi at the end of the night, and he's like, yeah, that'll be a tenner there, and you're fishing around for the change in your pocket, and you're there like, yeah, here you go, and you accidentally give him the one ring of power, so that wouldn't be ideal. No, I just brought up this question because it's not a really important question or anything, but as we said, Sauron poured his essence into the ring and it contains his soul, but this doesn't mean that the ring is sentient. But as we mentioned before, it almost has a mind of its own. So its soul basically wants to be reunited with its master. As we said earlier in this episode, it slips off Isildur's finger when he's in the river. It abandons Gollum when he is in the Goblin's Cave, when it's in his pockets. So this could be perhaps as orcs were near in both scenarios. I'm not really sure, but the ring would have had a better chance of being found and returned to its master if it slipped off at these ideal times, and an orc came along and picked it up. Bilbo had warned Frodo that the ring can slip off at inopportune moments, so I think this is just why it was worn around his neck, so it couldn't fly away or anything. But
I mean, it's just, in my opinion, a much more practical. Just a much more practical way of carrying the ring around. Like, as I said, in your pocket.
Yeah.
It's never going to be a safe place. I mean, maybe in Bilbo's little pockets on his waistcoat, maybe it looked kind of safe in there if he had a button on it. But even then, he was like we see at the beginning of the Fellowship, where he's like, "Where is it? Where is it?" And he's going mental looking around. I mean, if it's around your neck on a chain all the time, you're never like, "Oh my god, where is it?" So, yeah, it just saves a lot of panic.
Yeah, keep it secret, keep it safe around your neck. Now, I do wonder if the ring, it's not sentient, but it wants to get back to its master. Do you not think it could have had the ability to burn through the chain and slip away when orcs are near? I don't know. Anyways, just as a matter of interest, can you give me the characters who are able to refuse the One Ring?
Ooh, well, Galadriel has a whole big deal made about her especially in the movies. We get to see a really cool effect on Cate Blanchett, where she says, in place of a Dark Lord, you will have a queen, and that whole thing. That's class, very freaky.
Beautiful and terrible.
Yeah,
something like that.
All will love me and despair. So that's class. I love that part in the movie. And then she passes the test, as she says in her own words. So that's a very important part where it's offered to her. Obviously Gandalf, when he says, "You cannot offer me this ring," so he says no. And also Aragorn,
yes,
and Faramir.
Yes, well done, nice. Because
any more?
It's not really done that way in the film. Faramir is definitely tempted by the ring, but it's very he's still in the books.
Yeah, in the book he's still in the movie he still obviously eventually allows Frodo to go, but in the book he's not even tempted. He says something like, if it was on the highway I wouldn't. He says something about the highway.
He does
on
say
the motorway. I wouldn't pick it up. Yeah. What's the quote?
It's on the dual carriageway there.
Yeah.
Even if I think the quote is something like, even if it were on the highway, I would not touch it, or something like that. So
I would go on the low way.
Near Faramir, wherever you are, Amir.
If we're on the highway to hell. Sorry. You could
very good. The only ones really able to show real resistance to the One Ring were the hobbits, though, such as Bilbo, Frodo, and Samwise, because notably all these other characters, Gandalf, Galadriel, Aragorn, Faramir, none of them they all refused it, but none of them actually did so while touching the ring. Now, Gandalf did touch the ring, but I think it was later. Was it later? Was it the 17 years later where Frodo offers it to him and he's like, no, I will not do it. And at the council as well, Gandalf obviously refuses the ring.
Yeah. Yeah, no, sorry, yeah.
And obviously as well, we have the Tom Bombadil wears it and we know he's completely unaffected by the powers of it. So they discuss at the Council of Elrond whether to give it to Tom, and I think that's kind of shut down immediately because they're like, he doesn't really care about the dealings of Middle Earth, so there's no point.
Yeah, they say that he just wouldn't be able to understand the value of it and he'd probably just lose it.
Yeah.
They were like, he'd probably just completely forget about it. They were like, Tom, remember, this is very important. Don't. And he's like, oh, okay, no problem. And then he just immediately just throw it away. It's kind of like reminds me of Baby Groot in the second Guardians of the Galaxy, where they're like trying to teach him, how to.
Don't touch the red button. Isn't
like
that
to place the bomb, and then also when they're trying to get him to.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
To find the what's they call it, the thing on your man's head. They call it a fin.
Oh yeah.
The fin on Wandu, is that his name?
Yondu.
Close enough. On
you're right.
The blue guy on Yondu's head, the red fin. They're like trying to get him to go fight it. They're like, remember, it looks like whatever, and he comes back with like a salmon or something. And they're like, that's not what we said. And so it's like it's the memory of like an absolute goldfish. So
I love Bradley Cooper's acting in that as well, where he's just like, no, every time. Like,
he's Rocket, isn't he?
Yeah, Rocket.
Yeah.
And they have that thing where they're like, don't push this button. That will kill us all. And he's like, what do
Yeah.
you do? And he's like,
Yeah.
I am good. No.
Yeah.
So
So
very good.
that's kind of like Tom Bombadil, I suppose. Just remember Tom. He's like, okay, just chuck the ring away then immediately. So yeah, they were like, we can't really trust Tom.
Exactly. Tom Bombadil is just like Groot. So the next question, or possibly the last question I have to ask you here, is why could the One Ring only be destroyed in Mount Doom? Why is that? What is the reason?
Oh God.
Oh golly!
I mean,
gosh.
it's obviously that's where it was forged, and so that's kind of what they say, like, oh, only where it was made there could it be unmade and stuff like that. But then I think the actual reasons were that the fires of Mountain, or the fires of what's it called, Orodruin.
Orodruin.
The fires of Orodruin are like hotter than any other volcanoes in Middle Earth, I believe, as well. Which is that right? Am I making that up? Possibly. No, I think I've heard that before somewhere, that was like I don't know, it had the highest temperature of any of the lavas or something like that. So that's where they were able to, obviously the hotter you can get something, that's like the better the steel you're going to create, or the better ring you're going to make. So if you're forging, like the same with the thing with like the elves who are forging these like amazing weapons, they would need to use like extremely hot furnaces to do that. So I think that the heat is a factor as well. But I don't know.
Kind of. Well, this is one thing that people have pondered, is whether Tolkien had actually made a geological mistake in thinking that the magma inside a volcano is hotter than any other fire, such as a forge that could melt any metal on Earth, such as gold and steel. But maybe he just didn't have Google back then. But unfortunately, magma tops out at about 1300 degrees Celsius, whereas steel melts at 1370 degrees Celsius. So according to the science that we know today, dwarvish forges are hotter than a volcano, but Tolkien didn't know that. Now,
but my question is that what kind of Tolkien considered? Is there any part like in the lore that says that was one of the reasons why? That apparently, like, according to Middle Earth, this is where the hottest
I don't think so, because the rings of power worn by the dwarves had been melted by dragonfire, but dragonfire is stated to not be able to melt the One Ring. So perhaps it wasn't only heat that was required. In fact, it's definitely not only heat, because now twice in Lord of the Rings, you already mentioned it, but twice in Lord of the Rings, I believe it's the Fellowship of the Ring book, Tolkien writes a particular word instead of the word destroyed, and in the films
Unmade.
Elrond says it too. Exactly. So I was going to say, do you know what I speak? But unmade, yes, you are correct. So the ring isn't just being destroyed, but it's being deconstructed and disassembled. Mount Doom, or Orodruin, as we hear it called in the books, is where the ring is created, and thus the familiarity of its origin is where and only where it can be unmade. So not just any old volcano. It is suggested that there would be another way to unmake the Ring of Power, and that would be at the hands of a better craftsmith. But unfortunately, Sauron is the best in Middle Earth, as all others are in the West, and they would know better to meddle in the dealings of Middle
When you say
Earth.
the West,
But
you don't mean like just on the coast. You mean
Galway.
in Valinor. Like.
yes,
not
yes,
just-
in Valinor. So that does
not
beg
in
the
Lindon.
question then, Johnny, why couldn't Gandalf or Elrond just bring the ring over to Valinor with them and attempt to destroy it there?
Jesus, that'd be a risky move, I suppose.
That'd be a risky move, wouldn't it?
Bringing the most evil object and the most corrupting
heaven.
object into where all of the these like incredibly strong spirits and these basically godlike beings live. Imagine,
But it's just important to note that, well, I think it's heavily implied or suggested that the ring can only be destroyed in Mount Doom, but it could be unmade with a better craftsman than Sauron, but he is the best that there is on Middle Earth. Now, there are better ones that are dead and over in Valinor. So why couldn't
I
they
just
bring
don't
it
think
back
that
there?
would ever have been an option. I don't think the Valar would have accepted as something like a corrupted item to enter into Valinor, because I mean, just nothing is corrupted in Valinor, I suppose, and everything's kind of pure. Well, even that's not really true, but
It's up for debate.
yeah, but like they definitely would be like, oh, that's the most evil like artifact in the world. Yeah, please let that in here. Also, the
Yeah.
Valar were just like, look, just figure it out yourselves, lads. Like, you know, they're not too concerned about what's going on. I mean, they are a little bit. They like every now and again, very rarely they'll get involved and they'll step in, but normally they're just like, look, ye got yourselves into this mess. You know, you can get your own way out. And as I said, just can you imagine if the ring went into Valinor and then it managed to like corrupt Manwë or like
Holy
Ulmo or
moly,
something
yeah.
like that, and then they were just like this evil spirit, and they were like that would be a complete disaster altogether. So I don't know what answer you're going to give me, but I think that it's just never
Yeah.
going to be an option.
No, you're completely right. And just when you were mentioning it there, it really reminded me of, did you ever watch that TV show Marvel's What If? The cartoon, the animation.
I didn't see it all, but I saw a few episodes for sure.
So that's narrated by, the name escapes me, but the guy that's narrating every episode, he plays the Watcher, and he's basically, I think at the start of every episode he says something like, I do not interfere, I cannot meddle, or something, I am the Watcher. And that's
Sure.
really cool. But that kind of reminds me of what the Valar are. We know that the Valar do not interfere with the lives of the children of Iluvatar, which are basically the men and the elves. But Tolkien writes, quote, but Gandalf has revealed to us that we cannot destroy it by any craft that we here possess, said Elrond. And they who dwell beyond the sea would not receive it. For good or ill, it belongs to Middle-earth. It is for us who still dwell here to deal with it. So there you go. That's kind of Tolkien's poor attempt of an answer to why that they couldn't bring it over to... No, it's not a poor attempt of an answer, but it really is just like one line to dampen the theories of like, why can't they just bring it over to Valinor? Because I do certainly believe that the ring could be destroyed or unmade in Valinor, but yeah, basically the Valar are like the Watchers of the Marvel universe, or the Watcher, and they just do not interfere, and they cannot interfere, and yeah.
They're not like the Watcher in the water, however. He does get involved.
The Watcher in the water, yeah. He certainly gets
He
involved.
shouldn't be called the Watcher in the water. He should be called like the actor, not the actor. Like
The doer.
As in, he takes action. The doer in the water. Yeah, the attacker in the water.
Yeah, but there you go. That's why the ring has to be destroyed in Mount Doom, or the fires of Orodruin.
Yeah. Also, when people are like, "Oh, Tolkien has created the most amazing, world, whatever," and then he's called the scary mountain Mount Doom, such a load of shite, and you're like, "Yeah, well, it's actually called like the Orodruin and the cracks of Orodruin," but whatever. That's just like a little nickname. It has Mount Doom, I suppose.
Yeah, I don't know who gave it that nickname, but it is it
caught on.
Yeah, the Westron name for Orodruin, I suppose. Would it be Mount Doom?
Possibly. I don't know.
Possibly. So, yes, the Ring of Power. Power knows power. It is the most magical and powerful ring in Middle-earth, and therefore, whenever it is near a magical or powerful place or person, it grows in strength. We only see hobbits carrying the ring in any part of The Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit, but when offered to Gandalf, he recoils, and Galadriel sees the temptation of taking the ring as a great challenge, and this is a test of her fate. They both know how powerful they could be with the one ring, but as the ring contains Sauron's soul, it would be most powerful in his possession, and if he were to ever get it back, he would truly have been unstoppable. Humans are divided. Elves are all but diminished, and dwarves, they're too greedy to form alliances. All of Middle-earth would have fallen into the hands of Sauron. The power of the ring can be mighty and terrible in the hands of a powerful person, and even worse in the hands of the evil Dark Lord, but less impactful on the humble creatures such as a hobbit, and this is why Gandalf was so keen for the ring to remain in the possession of the hobbits, as the power of the ring would be dampened down for as long as possible. So this is why the story of the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit exists. So there you have it.
Nice little summary there. Nice little roundup of all the events. Very nice. I like it.
Any last words or questions before we wrap up today's episode?
Not really, no. I think that was quite insightful. A lot of things you've reminded me of that I knew before and had forgotten. A lot of things I didn't know, and kind of so I'm learning some new things for the first time.
You were good today. You were on the ball.
Thank
You're
you.
on the ball now. You're on the
Thank
ring.
you. Even though I don't know. I just had my coffee before this episode, so my brain was the synapses were firing.
Yeah, well, my brain is kind of melted as well. I not just after a coffee. I'm after about 18 pints from last night. So.
Drink out the ale! These men are thirsty!
One ring to rule them all.
But yeah, so that wraps up this episode. That's all. I was just going to say that's all, folks. But yeah, let's go for it. That's all this time, folks, on the Council of Elrond. So thank you so much for listening and or watching. This has been a fun ending to the 4-episode mini-series of The Rings of Power. Do you guys have any other interesting questions concerning the One Ring, or just facts that we might have missed or overstated? I've always wanted to know why it was a ring and not a sword or a crown or an iPhone. You know, why was that object a ring? But after Googling this, the answer doesn't really appear to be as interesting as I'd want. But yeah, you guys can send any thoughts or questions or queries to us on our socials, which are at Mellon_Heads on Twitter, and just the Mellon Heads on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Which I really encourage you guys to go over and check us out, by the way, because we are there on YouTube now. So give us a like, give us a subscribe. And we also want to announce that we will be covering all the episodes of the TV series The Rings of Power from next week. And we might have some special guests and goodies to bring out there as well. We'll be giving all of our thoughts on each episode as it comes out, our predictions, and trying to break down what everything means in the wider context of the story. So we're really looking forward to it now at this point, because it's been so long, four or 5 years in the making. I just want the show now.
Come on.
Come on. So yes, a special thank you to Jack Knightley on Patreon as well. And if you guys would like to support us on Patreon, you can do so. The links are in the description below. But until next time, guys, goodbye.